Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
On the show with us today here in Nashville, Tennessee at Music Dog Studios, Sherrill Blackman is joining us. Let me tell you a little bit about him. We've already had a great conversation just leading into this interview. He's from Dudley, North Carolina, originally arrived in Nashville in 1980. Graduated from Belmont University with a music business degree in 82. He served on the staff of the Nashville Songwriters Association International for 6 years and was General Manager of Buckhorn Music for 4 years until 1994, when he founded his SDB Music Group, a publishing and song-plugging company. Since that time, he has secured recordings for country, pop, rock, gospel, bluegrass, blues, jazz, and polka. I think I want to talk about that one at some point, resulting in multiple radio hits as well as gold, platinum, and multi-platinum certifications, several Grammy and IBMA nominations. Let me try that again. Several Grammy and IBMA nominations, and one Dove Award winner. His song placements include artists that have been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Country Music Hall of Fame, the Bluegrass Hall of Fame, and the Gospel Music Hall of Fame. Blackman is a 3-term past president of the Nashville Publishers Network and was named Music Row Magazine Songplugger of the Year in 2004, 2005, and 2006. Sherrill, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
That's quite the resume.
Well, I make up good stuff, but I'm proud to be here. I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
I know we are already. You came from North Carolina to Nashville. Was your intent to get into the music business?
It was. I was finishing up college at another school and was getting ready for what we had to do, a graduation exit interview. And I'm in the lobby where the counselors were at, thumbing through some magazines, waiting for my turn, and opened this magazine. I had this full-page ad from Belmont College at the time, now Belmont University. And it said, with degree programs in music publishing, record company, music management, studio engineer. I went, and all of a sudden, it's like the voice of God spoke to me and said, that's what you're supposed to do.
Wow.
And from that instant on, for the next year, I stayed out and worked, made some money, went back to school, took some more classes, all in a preparation to transfer out to Belmont to learn about this crazy music business. And that's what brought me here.
Were you a songwriter or an artist leading up to that?
Not an artist. I fancied myself as a songwriter. I was dabbling in lyric writing, wrote a ton of lyrics, and thought that's all it took. But once I got here and I realized, okay, I don't do the music.
Oh.
Fortunately, all my roommates were musicians, so we all collaborated and did that. But as I got more involved on the business side, the creative side got pushed further and further back. But the plus side of that time and that experience is now that as being a publisher and working with writers all the time, I use that knowledge and that experience and insight to help them better their songs. If something needs to be changed, I can pinpoint it and say, try this, or that line doesn't quite work. And they'll go, I was wondering about that line. I said, well, I think you can do better. And they'll come up with a better line.
My wife and I attended a Songwriters event last night here in downtown Nashville at the local, and 15, 20 different songwriters. And what I found interesting was each of their songwriting styles were so different from one another. And a lot of them were like, okay, that was good. That was nice. It was enjoyable. But a few of them you went, there's magic there. There's the potential of a hit. How does that come about?
I wish I knew.
Yeah, I think we all do.
It's an inanimate thing. I think, getting back to Belmont, they now have a degree program in songwriting. I fully believe you can teach the nuts and bolts craft of songwriting, But that thing that, like you were just referring to, that from those two songs, from those two writers, that's something that either you're born with or you're not born, and you can't teach that. And there's certain people that they just have it. And those are the ones that usually excel. And you could, learn how to rhyme words, and you can learn structure and all that stuff. But that extra something special, that comes from someplace else.
When you associated yourself with songwriters, you obviously being the lyricist, and the other ones writing the melody, the music aspect of it, was it something that you found some were easier to work with than others? What was that formula for you to go, yeah, I want to write with this person more so than maybe that person?
That's a great question. That is a wonderful question. It depends on what their background is and whether they play guitar or piano, because they come from two different mindsets. You know, the piano players usually want to throw in all these extra notes and chords and stuff and make it jazzy or poppy or whatever, and the guitar players usually have a different approach. So it really depended on who I was writing with at the moment. But that was long ago and far away. Kind of like that old Zeppelin song.
When we talk about publishing and song plugging, because you had SDB Music Group, which was which you still do, publishing and song plugging are the same or different?
The song plugging aspect is a branch of publishing. Most of your publishers, especially on Music Row, they have people on staff that they get the songs from the writers and they go pitch them and set up co-writes and all that stuff. But that's what I do. The difference between being a hired gun to be a song plugger from some of the writers I represent and being a publisher is, as a plugger, I don't own any of the song. As a publisher, I do own the song. So that's the basic difference.
So the role of a song plugger, because we're going to talk about publishing, which is a very deep and vast black hole to go down. Song plugging is what?
Using your connections that you've built up over a long period of time, or just maybe just developed, to extract information about upcoming projects and then use that knowledge to decide whether, okay, do I have anything in my arsenal or / catalog from my writers that fits what they have described? And I've got to use a judgment. And sometimes I have to make the calls like, I don't have anything that fits that. And hopefully I build up enough trust and respect from those folks that when I tell them I don't have anything, they will go, bless him. Because so many people try to cram stuff in. I've always believed in more of the soft sell, let the music speak for itself. There's some people I've seen operate the other way where they beat people over the head. This is a hit song, and if you don't think this is a hit song, you're crazy. It's like, that ain't me. If the music's not there and it's not speaking to them, I can't change that. So I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but I've got to use my vast knowledge of what I represent song-wise to determine whether it fits a particular project, whether it be country, pop, a movie or a TV show or whatever it is. I've got to make that decision. And sometimes writers are okay with it. Sometimes they're not happy with that.
I know back in the day, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe back in the day there were tip sheets that came out on Music Row of this artist is going into the studio and is looking for this style of music or these songs. How is that done now? Because obviously we're not mailing out tip sheets. This is back in the day when email was still really in its infancy. I'm dating myself here, but
I'm with you.
It's changed quite a bit.
Definitely changed a lot.
So how do you go about, as a song plugger, finding those people to submit a song to?
Again, another great question. There's in-house tip sheets that are generated by the record companies, or the big publishing companies have their own in-house tip sheets. There are commercially available tip sheets that anybody can subscribe to and think that they've got the inside information. One of my favorite sayings is, what is the most dangerous animal on the face of the earth? A songwriter with a tip sheet. because they read this stuff and they go, oh, I've got 5 songs that fit that project. I've got 2 that fit that. And it's like, yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
Because what's happened over the past 15 to 20 years is more and more artists are writing. So a writer can't write and expect them to take or be excited about something that's the same as what that artist is writing or the producer is writing. They're already doing that. And plus, a lot of times a writer is thinking, well, this is what they've done. I know exactly what they've done. And they're aiming behind the curve. And part of my job, to get back to your question, is to do a ton of research. Tip sheets are just a small part of it. They're kind of a general loose guide that lets me know who's coming up. But a lot of them, if you look, they don't really tell you exactly what they're looking for. Most of the time, it's really vague, great songs, or tempos, or just something very generic. They don't really tell you much. So I, and people that do what I do, have to do a tremendous amount of research to find out and make the calls to the people I know. Okay, I see where George Strait's coming up, or I see that Miranda Lambert's coming, or whoever the artist is. What's going on? Is there something special that's in her going on in her life? If an artist just got married, or if they just had a baby, or maybe they just broke up with somebody, it's going to dictate what kind of songs they gravitate towards. And I have to be aware of that. And a lot of writers don't want to do that kind of research, but that's what I do that goes on behind the scenes that they don't see. And so I do most of my time is not spent pitching songs, but actually researching to see what to pitch.
Is it the same for film and television? Because that's a totally different world than pitching to an artist.
Yeah, it really is. I've been fortunate to have gotten some placements here and there, but it's the problem there is I don't own the master recording. They like one-stop shopping, meaning if they hear something they like, they want to call you and say, we want this song, here's what we're all in, this is what we're offering, and it includes the song, which is the actual song, words and lyrics, and I mean the melody and lyrics, and the recording. Well, see, I don't represent the recording.
Gotcha.
And once they find out, they go, oh, you've wasted my time. And once I figured out that I was wasting their time because I didn't represent the whole package, I kind of backed off from pitching to film and television.
But it's all about the relationship, right?
Sure.
And it's building those relationships. I think so many aspiring songwriters, and we'll focus on that and not the artist.
Mm-hmm.
I get the feeling so many aspiring songwriters come to town and feel that if I could just get my foot in one door, I'm set. But you don't build relationships that way.
That's a good aspiration.
Yeah.
The key is most aspiring writers tend to not know how to get their foot in the door. They're waiting. I've known dear friends of mine sat at home thinking, well, I'm so talented, the phone's going to ring. They're going to know about me. And it never happened. One of the things that I think has helped set me apart from most others, I got out there. There was a period of time for over 20 years. I was at writers' nights, probably 6 out of 7 nights a week, every single night. I was going to showcases. I was going to all kinds of industry events. If there was an office open house party, I was there. The main key to this business, as you know, is showing up.
Yeah.
Because if you show up, good things can happen. So I would go to these events, and I'd look around the room, and none of my fellow, I don't want to call them competitors, but my friends that do what I do were not there. And yet they would, when I'd have something good happen, they'd go, well, how did you do that? Well, I went to this thing here, and I met so-and-so that introduced me. And I went, so a lot of people are not willing to get out and work and network and do what it takes. And that's a big part of it.
One of the biggest bones of contention that I have to this day, and everybody's got their phone with their QR code, and here, let me just scan the information. I'm old school, and I'm going to continue to be that way until my dying day. And that's having business cards in your hand, because that physical piece of information that you hand to someone may go into their pocket. But at some point, they're going to retrieve it, whether they're cleaning out their pockets or it's going to laundry or, they're sorting through things, and it triggers that moment. It triggers that memory. And I don't believe the QR code does that. And you get lost in the phone. And I think that is a great way to get to know people. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree. I'm probably older school than you are. In fact, I'm around these young kids, and it helps keep me young and relevant thinking-wise. When I'm around these young kids, I'm listening to what they're talking about, and they're like, that may work with some of these kids, but I still believe, like you, in that business card. I've got a stack of them in my pocket that I carry with me all the time. So I'm with you.
I just think it's so important that we don't forget some of these things in our business aspects of, the day-to-day operations of networking, especially.
Yeah. When I'm around some of these young kids who are now in the publishing business, their mindset is not on how to pitch a song. That's almost become a lost art. It's today's publishing, these young kids, it's all about setting up the co-write, the proper co-write with the right artist, the right producer. That's all they know is keeping a calendar. They don't really have not learned the art and craft of pitching songs. And it's a weird dynamic for those of us of a certain age to see this as like they're calendar keepers, they're babysitters. They're not pitching songs and learning how to work songs for the most part. No. It's all about the game of let's connect the dots. Let's put our guys together to write with your guys, and okay.
In the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, Sherrill Blackman.
When you have a Korg synth at your fingertips, the possibilities are endless. Be it digital, analog modeling, altered FM, wave sequencing, or the multi-engine synth, Korg gives you easy access to a variety of features to help you get the perfect sounds quickly. Whether you're a professional musician or just starting out, Korg truly has a synthesizer to help you express yourself. Visit Korg.com or your favorite Korg dealer to get your hands on one of their products to create new music always. Korg, the official sponsor of the business side of music.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee on the business side of music, Sherrill Blackman is sitting across the podcast table here. Some of your history, we were talking before the show, do you know this person or do you know that person? And, I see you're connected in that aspect. Do you find that it's still a small world to a certain extent when you go out there and you start reaching out to new people? I'm not talking about the young people necessarily, because they still have to build their, for lack of better terms, their street cred. But to find, like you and I were talking about our connections with, with Rick Derringer and other artists along those lines. And Leanne Rimes, that's right.
Yeah.
That gets back to the relationship. But do you find yourself in the same circle of friends still to this day? I mean, you've been doing this for more than a minute and a half. Or are you constantly going out and trying to seek out new opportunities and new relationships?
I try to maintain my older connections and friends, although most of them are either getting out of the business, either retiring, moving on to another phase in their life. Some of them, unfortunately, are passing away. I've lost several friends just in the past year that have been long-term music business friends of mine. I try to keep myself relevant by staying plugged into the younger generation to find out what they're doing it, how they're doing it, who they're connected to. So it's a balance of both worlds. And I think they look to me, I'm kind of like one of the elder statesmen of Music Row now because I've been doing it for 40 years.
Right.
And they can't comprehend that because for some of them, that's twice as long as they've been alive.
It's kind of a scary thought when you think about it.
Yeah.
So let's turn the table a little bit and let's head down that road of music publishing, because that in itself is really the unknown quantifier. And we talked about song plugging versus music publishing. Music publishing, in 20 words or less, is
the business side of songwriting. And when I do seminars and workshops across the country, I draw a diagram of a big circle and I put a line down the middle, and I'll put one side 100% songwriting, the other side 100% publishing. The publishing is the business side of songwriting, meaning the licensing, the pitching, which is back to the plugging part, pitching, the licensing, the royalty collection, making sure all the paperwork is in place. That's all publishing. It's all the business stuff.
Publishing has been around for a long time, obviously. I'm not going to try and come up with a date, but we'll say it's been around for a long time.
Well, being an amateur music historian,
yes,
it goes back to late 1800s.
Has the royalties, because we hear about this every once in a while in our business, and I think you know where I'm going with this, has the royalty rate, the royalty structure, has it caught up to what it's actually worth? Because when you say the 1800s, that was a different set of economics than we're in today. And one of the biggest things I continue to hear is nobody can make money in songwriting anymore compared to what it was like, 10, 20, 30 years ago.
In the 90s, it was people, because CDs, people are not buying CDs anymore. Plain and simple. It's all gone to streaming. And the royalty rate for streaming is so low that it is just laughable. The royalty rate for mechanical, which means something affixed to a CD, a cassette, a vinyl album,
right,
that sort of thing, just went up from 9.1 cents, which it had been for years and years and years, up to 12 cents just as of January 1st. But nobody's buying physical stuff unless they're buying a vinyl, but they're not buying CDs. Actually, to the point, I had a meeting with the label head of a Bluegrass company last week. They're not even going to do CDs anymore. He's playing around with the idea of it'll be a USB flash drive, putting the album and some extra content on that, putting it in a case like a little digipack, like a CD, so you can put it on a shelf and know what you've got, like an album or a CD. But it's going to be, because vehicles don't have CD players.
Right.
So it's something you can plug into your USB drive or plug into your computer and play the music. And so now he was asking me, so you'd have to license that. I said, yeah, you got a license. Anytime you sell music, you've got a license.
If it's a physical piece of product.
Physical piece, that's called a mechanical.
Yeah.
And that goes back to piano rolls. And back then, pre-records, sheet music, print and sheet music was a big thing. So consequently, that's how music was marketed, was via sheet, because everybody had a piano in the parlor, and they would sit around and somebody would play and sing. So the millions and millions of pieces of sheet music were sold back then, and that's how it was. And as records started coming, I've got a collection of sheet music, and there'll be a little ad on the side saying, also available on player piano rolls and the new records, which were just coming in like in the 20s and early 30s.
Which would have been the old glass platters, right?
Well, more like shellac platters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting that sheet music was the big boom, and then all of a sudden when the recording thing took off, where the technology became better and they started able to make physical records that we know of, 78s, and then as that progressed into 33 1/3 and 45s that we kind of grew up with, and then from there cassettes and CDs, and then now it's all within MP3s, now it's streaming. So the technology shift is just mind-boggling. And one of the hardest things about publishing is to stay up to date with technology and figure out how to license those uses, because technology always outpaces legislation in how to license stuff.
Yeah, and legislation takes forever to catch up to the technology.
So like the big thing now is TikTok. Everybody's like, oh, TikTok, get your songs on TikTok. A lot of artists are marketing their music on TikTok. Well, 4 years or 5 years from now, it's going to be something else. It'll be another format.
Is there any money to be made in streaming at this point? I've spoken to a couple songwriters who have basically all but given up songwriting because there is no money in streaming. So maybe I should ask this. How do you go about making money in the streaming world?
You have to have a massive, massive hit. The general rule of thumb is to make 1 cent off of streaming, you have to have something that streams 1,000 times. So 1,000 streams, give or take, equals 1 cent.
1 penny.
1 penny.
Wow.
So if there's one writer and one publisher, that would be split 50-50. If there's 2 writers and 2 publishers, that's split into quarters. So you can see it doesn't add up to much if the more writers you have on a song. So you can do the math. 1,000 streams would be a penny. 10,000 would be what, 10 cents?
Right.
Then you start getting up to 1 million streams would be what, $100?
$100, yeah.
Yeah, so you'd have to have something that streamed hundreds of millions of times to actually see any semi-decent money.
Yeah. So what is the songwriter and the publisher? What do they do these days? How do you keep the lights on and the doors open?
You have to hope for a radio single. That's where your money's at.
Oh, see, I never would have looked at it from that aspect.
Yeah. And that's why all the artists and producers are writing, like I alluded to earlier. They go, oh, if we write it, we make the money. So they're writing as much, and they're, because of contracts that they're in with their publishing, if they have a publishing deal, and their record companies, they all have these content agreements in their contracts that pretty much says they need to provide X amount of songs for their project to make it profitable or worthwhile. So they do keep the money in-house. So consequently, I tell writers, a good song is not going to make it. Now, let me repeat that. A good song is not going to make it. It's going to take a great song that beats those politics. And it's going to take something that transcends the ordinary, I love you and you love me and everything's great, or let's get in my truck and put your bare feet on the dashboard. All that stuff is so generic. Or let's dance across the sawdust floor at the bar. All that stuff is cliche. It's going to take a song like The House That Built Me, Live Like You Were Dying, I Drive Your Truck, Till You Can't. That was a big song this past year. Buy Dirt, which was CMA song. It's going to take those powerhouse lyric type of songs that's going to really be the things that break through.
When we talk about, let's take LeAnn Rimes, because both you and I have worked with her during her career. A song like Blue, which launched her, had really, I guess, had been sitting around gathering dust for some time before it was presented to her, before it was pitched to her.
Yeah. Yeah, Bill, he was a legendary DJ down in Texas. I forget his last name. He's passed away now, but he wrote it way back in the 60s. And I think Wilbur, LeAnn's father, knew him and asked if he had anything, because they were really having a hard time. Nobody wanted to pitch songs at that time to a 10-year-old girl.
To an unknown 10-year-old girl.
Exactly.
Who had maybe been on Star Search, and that was about it.
I think she'd played the Grapevine Opry in Texas. That was about the biggest thing. I'm not sure if she'd been on Star Search. I don't know about that. Maybe. I don't know. But anyway, I know when I was talking to Wilbur, he said, nobody will pitch us anything. Well, I said, by God, I'll send you something. And by taking a chance, that's why I always encourage people, always take a chance, because you never know what's going to happen. And I've got another story to tell you that just came down yesterday that proves the point. But so I sent stuff to Wilbur. He said, we're liking this. We're liking this. So they collected a bunch of songs where they wound up recording that one that was on the Blue album. And it was written by this little old grandmother up in Kentucky that just sat down and banged it away on her piano. And remember, we were talking about earlier about being able to have that insight as a writer to be able to help a writer rewrite something or suggest it needs to be the melody was terrible. Terrible. And her name was Kawita House, just this little old sweet grandmother I'd met when I worked at the Songwriters Association. And I said, Kawita, I love the lyric. It was called I'll Get Even With You on the first album. And it's a negative title, but she wrote it positive. It's basically saying, you have loved me so much all my life, I want to turn it around and I'll get even with you, loving you back. And Wilbur called me and said, we love this song. Well, back up. So I said, Kawita, the melody is just not there. You need a fresher melody. And to her credit, about 2 weeks later, she goes, well, see what you think of this. I went, now you got it. I said, that's something special. I can do something with that. So anyway, flash forward. I sent it to Wilbur. Wilbur said, well, LeAnn's only 10. She's never even been in puppy love. Well, I don't know if she's old enough to relate. I said, well, make it about her to you and Belinda as a child to a parent. He goes, that'll work.
Yeah.
I went, whew. So again, that's stuff like that publishers do that the writers never see that makes the difference.
Yeah, and in fact, I think we went through that with the song How Do I Live, which was originally supposed to be on Con Air. Well, it was, in fact, on Con Air.
But they used Trisha
Yearwood. They used Trisha Yearwood because they said Leanne Rimes is too young. What does she know about, how do I live without someone? So you're right. It really does come down. It's a matchup, isn't it? It's really the song. How do you match that up to the right artist?
Yeah. I tell writers, be very careful about aging a song. Because just because you have kids or the older writers, grandkids, these young artists can't relate to that unless it's a third-person song where they're telling a story. But with a one-on-one, they can't do that.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of make it age appropriate. And it was hard with a 10-year-old. And in fact, she cut a song on that first album that I was surprised that they cut it because it had some lyrics that could have been taken the wrong way, but they got away with it.
Well, actually, I think I remember that song, and I remember we did get a little bit of flack for it. But, she was such a powerhouse at that moment.
Yes.
That it didn't matter. We could have had her release singing a nursery rhyme, and it would have been a smash hit at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they almost recorded 2 other songs that, this is the craziest thing. One of them had been recorded by a group called Highway 101.
Oh, yeah.
It never made an album. It never played at radio. They did a video. It played on CMT one Sunday morning early. Wilbur just happened to be up, drinking coffee, has it on, and it plays that one time. He calls me up, he goes, we can't record this. It's already out. I went, no. It didn't make the album. I didn't know they did a video. And it played one time on CMT, and he happened to see it. And so it shot that one out. They didn't want to record it because of that.
That's another question in that just because a song has been picked up by an artist, let's say it's an album cut, it's never released as a single, another artist can maybe find some life in that song as a single?
Yeah. It doesn't happen enough, but it can happen. Blake Shelton had a huge hit with a song called Who Are You When I'm Not Looking. It was a big hit for him that Joe Nichols had as an album cut, but didn't release as a single. Some artists and record companies are okay with it, and some are not. And I especially run into that in the bluegrass world because it's such a small world. They don't want to compete with an artist that's already got a song out, even if it's just an album cut. Now, if it's an old classic like from Bill Monroe or Flatt and Scruggs or Stanley Brothers, they're okay with an old classic artist because it's their homage to that artist. But if it's somebody, a contemporary, they don't want to do it, which is so weird to me because, as you know, 60s and 70s, people put out the same versions of songs all the time. And there were, Light My Fire by Jose Feliciano did not sound anything like The Doors, but it was just as great as The Doors.
Yeah.
And it's just a mindset that just drives me crazy. If you love the song, put it out.
In the studio with us here, Nashville, Tennessee, on the business side of music, Sherrill Blackman.
Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right. Everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena. And believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message. Thanks.
Back in the studio here with Sherrill Blackman sitting across the podcast table. You mentioned that something interesting happened yesterday, and we didn't really delve into that. So let's dig into that for a moment, if you don't mind.
It's one of those weird things that you cannot predict, you cannot plan for. You can't make this up. It just happens. And that's why I encourage writers to just, if you get your songs out into the universe, and I'm not saying post it on YouTube and spot it. That's not what I'm talking about. I just pitch to, if somebody's looking for songs, pitch it to them. Even if it's unknown, just pitch it to them. Because this happened, I got an email late Monday night. I don't have a website, so unfortunately people have trouble finding me. I don't want all the crazy people trying to find me. But I'd done a song screening session for a friend of mine months and months ago, and she had it posted on her website that I had done this song screening. So this person out in California doing a Google search, trying to find me because of a song, finds me on this site, reaches out to her on her website. I'm looking for Sherrill Blackman. We recorded this song, and I know it's his, but that's all I've got. So this person forwarded me the email. I reached out to the artist yesterday. It had been pitched to somebody 20 years ago. That person had given it to somebody else. That person had given it to somebody else who gave 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 it to this artist's father, who had a big pop instrumental hit in the 60s, a guy named Bill Purcell. And he was I knew him as a professor at Belmont. So he heard this song through this whole chain of people. He instantly heard this orchestration because he was a side musician doing arrangements and stuff on thousands of records here in Nashville for 60s and 70s and 80s, and as well as teaching at Belmont. He heard this orchestration, and he recorded it with his daughter singing on it. And she was reaching out to me trying to find licensing so that they could release this record. It had been pitched over 20 years ago. And you can't plan for this kind of stuff.
And in the process, a half dozen to a dozen different sets of hands touched it.
Yeah. So here, go listen to it. Oh, this is cool. And it's like, wow, that's the power of a great song. And it's not country song. This is almost sound like an old standard, which I've always loved. And I talked to the writers yesterday to give them the good news. And they said, well, we never wrote that with Nashville in mind. We just wanted to write something that sounded timeless. I said, you did.
You did.
So that just happened, came down yesterday.
And it survived the test of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So that was a very neat thing to happen, just out of the blue. Now, whether it makes any money or not, it sure is a great story.
But it's seeing the light of day after all these years.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Well, it's kind of like when Natalie Cole recorded Unforgettable, that had been around for 40 or 50 years, and the writer wound up winning a Grammy because of it.
That was her duet that she did with her dad.
With her father. Yeah, I think he may have done a version back in the 50s.
Right.
And the writer was just thrilled. I remember his acceptance speech. He said, I wrote this back in the 40s or early 50s, and this was like in the 80s. He says, you just never know when a great song's going to pop back up.
It's seeing new life again.
Yeah.
So let's go have that conversation. Well, let me back up for a minute, because a lot of people look at bluegrass music as it's hillbilly music. You know, it's the Appalachian in the holler type sound.
Yeah.
But it's more worldwide. It's more global than that, isn't it?
Absolutely. When I first got into bluegrass, I had to do a crash course because I started getting these songs recorded. And I didn't really know much about it. So like I found some songs I liked. I started pitching to people, and they started recording them. I'm like, oh, I better start finding out more about this world. So I had to do a crash course. There are some phenomenal singers in the bluegrass world, much better than what you're hearing in country. I mean, these people can sing, and the musicianship is stellar. These people can play. I mean, world-class musicians. And I was like, wow, this is a whole world that everybody needs to learn about. Now, there's the stereotype is, and that's what my mother thinks of bluegrass. But Some of these artists, they have the most angelic voices you'll ever hear.
Well, like Alison Krauss, Ricky
Krauss.
Skaggs.
Yeah. And there's Amanda Smith, Brooke Aldridge, Claire Lynch, Dale Ann Bradley. These women have the most beautiful angelic voices you'll ever hear. Just beautiful, and can sing circles around just about anybody. But yeah, I've actually had a tremendous amount of success in the bluegrass world. Just finding songs that I liked and pitching them out to different artists, and it's fun. It's a small niche, so it doesn't make a lot of money, but I'm having fun with it.
And it's an extremely loyal audience, too, listening audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about this polka. And when we talk about polka music, if you ever watched like RFD TV on Saturday mornings, and you had the Uncle Bob polka show,
yeah,
or of course you got John Candy and Home Alone, with his polka band they're big in Wisconsin. What part? Oshkosh. Polka music. Let's talk about that one.
Yeah, I'm kind of proud of that one. I've only had one, but it was.
That's all it takes, though.
Yeah, it was nominated for a Grammy, which blew my mind because it was so unlikely of something to happen. But there's an artist, I'm not sure if she's even here in town anymore, in Nashville. I had a meeting with her. Her name's Lynn Marie, and she plays the accordion and does polka. And we had a meeting. She goes, I said, I don't know if I got anything polka. She goes, well, do you have anything like a jump swing, like a Texas swing that jumps a little more? She goes, it's the same underlying rhythm. I went, yeah, I do. And one of my writers had just given me this kind of a jump Texas swing thing. And I played it for her, and she goes, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So it was me remembering this song, matching it with what she was telling me, kind of a jump swing thing. And she recorded it, polka, and then the album was nominated for a Grammy. And I said, do you think you could win? She goes, no. Whoever Frankie Yankovic, who was the king of polka,
right,
was also nominated. She goes, he's going to win. He always wins. People know that name, so they always vote who they know. And that's what happened. But it was fun being nominated on a Grammy-nominated polka album.
Polka album.
Yeah.
Who would have thunk?
But it wasn't a polka demo or a song. It was a jump Texas swing kind of a song.
Yeah.
Now, with that said, I do have some polka songs now because I kept that in mind. It's like, okay, I don't have a lot. I've got about 2 or 3. So if the opportunity ever comes up again, it's like I reach in there and pull them out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At this point or let me put it this way. At this time, how many songs do you have in your catalog, in your library, that yet anytime you can go out and pitch?
Well, what I have access to and what is actual pitchable on a frequent basis is much different. I mean, I probably have access to well over 1,000 songs, maybe 1,200 songs. The ones that are actually pitchable in country is probably less than, great songs that are pitchable, probably less than 50. And
I think that kind of gets back to that conversation I had where my wife and I attended the Songwriters night. There was a lot of good songs, but there were only really a couple great songs.
Yeah.
And it's really sifting through that. And I don't want to say chaff, but really it's kind of what it is. You've got to really sift through to find those great songs.
Yeah. There's a lot of good songs. I mean, that's where the biggest category is. There's a lot of good songs.
Yeah.
But to find those truly great magical songs, those are rare. Those are hard to find.
And then how do you hold on to those as a publisher? You know you've got them. You want to get them out there. Do you pitch that magical great song to anybody and everybody, or you really take the time to find the right fit?
That's a great question, too. There's a hierarchy. You always shoot at the biggest artists first, the Tim McGraws, the Garth Brookses, the Carrie Underwoods. You go after those first. And then once you've worked that level, you bring it down. I don't want to say the B level, but the next level down that maybe you're not like the superstars, but they're stars and they're great artists as well. But you move down to that level and you work that level and then down to the next level. That's most of the time. Sometimes that wasn't the case, like with Leanne Rimes. She was just starting out and just on the ground. And it's like, so sometimes she's like, you know what? I believe in this artist. Great singer, great potential, has the look, has the team behind her, which is very important.
Yeah.
I want to take a chance. I want to get on the ground floor. And I've done that a lot, especially in the bluegrass world, where I've taken a chance and turned out to have top 10 and number 1 singles with that.
Do you still find the record label as being a viable source of pitching music to versus the independent artist?
Got to be careful how I say this.
Well, I'm not looking to throw anybody under the bus.
No, I understand.
I still have relationships with record labels.
I understand.
And I like to keep those too. But I'm an indie artist kind of a guy. I'm an advocate of the indie artist.
Me too. I do a pitch thing, a diagram. It's like, okay, it's like a diamond. And at the top of that diamond, I try to go to the artist first. And then you come down to the next level, manager, producer. And as you go down to the bottom, the record company. And then underneath that, I draw a line, so it looks like a kite, the tail of the kite, auxiliary people like hairdressers, attorneys, bus drivers, accountants, which is how I got a George Jones cut one time. I heard that he goes by her office, went by her office, pick up mail and stuff, and I took at that time, a cassette. I took a cassette over there, and next thing I know, I get a call from George's wife saying, well, we picked up this cassette at our accountants, and we love this song, and they recorded it, and it was a single for George.
Was that unsolicited when you did that?
Yeah, they didn't solicit it, but I'd been told that it was okay.
Gotcha.
That some people would do that, and so I just went over and dropped it. And they said, "Oh yeah, okay, great, we'll put it in this stuff." And
wow,
yeah,
unheard of these days.
It's getting tougher because most of these places you can't even get in because everybody's got security guards.
Right,
and it's like, are you kidding me? But I understand the reason. There's a lot of crazy people trying to work their way in these doors that are emotionally unstable. So I understand the need for security guards.
Yeah.
But what was the question again?
Well, when I think about you pitch a song to...
back to the record
label, yeah.
Referring to the A&R people.
Yes.
They're all very nice people. They have their jobs. But what happens is if I pitch something to an A&R person, they effectively turn into a songplugger in trying to work it to their artist. And so they get songs from me, they get songs from all the other hundreds of entities trying to get, so it's like, okay, we're all trying to fight for the same space in that little stream there. So that's why I pitched A&R out of respect and to keep those connections going, but I usually work the other people.
Yeah. You working on anything right now?
Always.
All the time?
Always.
Yeah.
The wheels are always turning.
Yeah.
Always turning. Yeah, I've got some projects that have requested some songs that when I get back to the office, which is in my home, I've got a big list of stuff I need to get done. But it's fun. Yeah, I'm one of the luckiest people in the world to be able to do what I do because I love it and get paid for it.
Are you currently looking for songwriters? You looking for new material?
Yes, but it's got to be that cream of the crop type stuff. So I get people, I don't actively solicit, but people find me through friends or through these song screenings I've done. On occasion I hear something that this person's got something, like you were talking about at that writer's night. This person's got something. I'd like to hear more of what they do.
Yeah.
And I'll open the door. Then writers I've worked with before will send me stuff. So I'm always getting stuff in. But too many writers want to chase the trends or the fad instead of, they're always behind the curve. And I always encourage them, don't work behind the curve, get ahead of the curve. Create something that people are going to chase you. Because when I ran Buckhorn, a very legendary lady named Mary John Wilkins. She wrote Long Black Veil and One Day at a Time, and she discovered Chris Christopherson. And she told me she used to have this conversation with Chris Christopherson because he was just getting started. He would bring in songs to play for her, and she'd say, Chris, it's already been done. You're writing what was done in the 50s. You need to create something fresh and unique and different. And she worked with him for 3 years, from 65 to 68. And finally, he brought in a song called Darby's Castle. And I encourage people to go listen to that song, Darby's Castle. That's the song that the light bulb went off in his head that elevated him up to the next level, because that's when he went on to write For the Good Times and Me and Bobby McGee and help him make it through the night. But it took that song because that's where all the pieces came together.
Yeah.
And it was recorded a few times. It was never a big hit, but it was recorded a few times. But that song is the one where he got it.
Yeah, switch the light bulb on.
Yeah.
Man, that's great.
And he wasn't chasing other people. That song and everything else after that, everybody was chasing him. And that's what I encourage writers to do, is don't listen to the radio and copy what you're hearing, what's going on now. Understand what's going on now, but create something that is going to lead the market. And some people just don't know how to do that.
Sherrill, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Well, thank you, man. I've had a blast. I wish it could go on for 2 or 3 more hours.
Well, we probably could, and we'll do it again.
We could do a part 2 and 3.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because there's a lot of more stuff to cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.